Joining me now for the latest, national editor at The Australian, Dennis Shanahan. Dennis, ACT Independent Senator David Pocock has done a deal with the government to get these bills through. Business, who believe the government's spin at the recent Jobs Summit, well, they remain concerned that the parameters are still too weak for the small and medium-sized players. I'll get into some of that detail shortly, but the PM's claiming it as a big win. Now, given it'll come at the cost of his relationship with business, but it's very pro-union, maybe that's a trade-off. How do you read it?
Well, essentially, this is a big win for Anthony Albanese and the new Labor government. Not only is it a big win as far as politics is concerned, but it also demonstrates a strength in the procedures of Parliament, his ability to actually get through contentious, highly contested legislation for which he didn't have a mandate during the election, and yet he's managed to do it. And this legislation will probably pass on Saturday. And so that, as he promised, the IR legislation, which of course business still says is a problem for them, problem for small business, that the amendments that David Pocock have won are not enough, they haven't gone far enough, and that's part of the cost that Anthony Albanese is bearing, and that is the loss of his relationship with business. But there is no denying it is a big win psychologically and politically and procedurally for the new Labor government.
I suppose if it doesn't move wages, though, as promised, and we know we've got the inflation challenge too, I mean, if it doesn't move wages, it's not a win with voters.
Well, this is the other side of the equation. What we actually have today, Tony Burke, Workplace Relations Minister, was saying, oh, well, look, it might take a while to get through. There'll be different impacts over different times in different industries. The government is saying, you know, that was their promise during the election campaign, was we want to get wages moving. Now, they didn't say how they were going to do it. They've now done it. They've got that through, but the real test will come for people who are saying, OK, when do the wages rise? The legislation is now through. When do they get through? And so this is the big test as people feel more and more pressure because of inflation and the cost of living.
I know if he couldn't get his bill through the Parliament, he could have plain the bill, but of course now he's got his legislation, there's nowhere to hide. Let's go to this censure motion announced today by the PM against former Prime Minister Scott Morrison. It comes, of course, after the findings of the Bell report released on Friday, finding the former Prime Minister, in holding five secret portfolios. He fundamentally undermined the principles of responsible government. Now, I agree with the Bell inquiry. I was pretty strong in my condemnation of what the PM did on Friday when the report came out. But this censure motion, for people at home, it's got no practical outcome. It's a very public rebuke, of course, in the chamber, but it'll likely be untidy for the coalition, because the MP's Liberal Party manager of opposition business in the House and, of course, the National Party have said they won't support the censure motion. But there's a lot of angry MPs at what Scott Morrison did on the Liberal side in particular. They'll now be expected to support him by voting against the censure. How's that going to work?
Well, look, I think that Scott Morrison's behaviour on this particular occasion seemed to me to be quite bizarre. It was unnecessary. It didn't have to be secret if he had to do it at all. And he's made a real problem for his coalition colleagues now in opposition. I think that what Anthony Albanese is doing, he's moving the censure motion. He confirmed in Parliament today there would be a censure motion. Now, these are normally motions moved by oppositions. They're normally moved as a political campaign against a government. They often are defeated. On the one occasion recently where one did succeed, it had no effect. They have no effect. They are political, they are partisan, and they will not really make it difficult, any real difficulty for Scott Morrison. The problem for Peter Dutton is that there is no way that he could endorse a censure motion against the former leader. After all, Scott Morrison did a very good job during the pandemic. And Peter Dutton won't want to be seen to be doing that. He will stand up, he will defend him, partly because he has no choice, and the government will continue to try to embarrass Peter Dutton as the current leader. But of course, Peter Dutton says, I didn't know about it. And I think that there's a danger here for Labor. They don't want to be seen to be going down too far this rabbit hole about Scott Morrison, because what they're talking about are some very big decisions on wages, energy prices, and people don't want to see playing of politics at the expense of concentrating on those main jobs of attacking inflation, the cost of living, energy prices and wages. So I think there's a danger here for both sides.
Yeah, it becomes a parlour game in Canberra. Someone was reported in the papers today saying that they thought Scott Morrison might announce his retirement over the summer break. I think he'll wait till after the March state election in New South Wales, and there might be a candidate who perhaps loses their seat at a state level who can then run for the expected by-election in the seat of Cook. What do you think, Dennis?
Oh, look, there's been speculation for some time that Scott Morrison did want to leave after the defeat, and so many Prime Ministers have after they've been defeated. And so everyone understands that. I think he was prevailed upon to hang around because of the situation. Labor had had a good victory and the Liberals had not done well, as opposed to the Nationals federally. And so I think there's a lot of pressure on Scott Morrison to sit it out. And you have to feel for him. He sits up there at the backbench being hammered every day and accused of various things, now facing a censure motion. I think that he will hold on for a bit longer, but would be reasonable for him to want to stay, support his name for a while, protect his legacy for a while, and then depart next year.
Dennis Shanahan, thank you.